where we're at.
Okay.
And then at 1:15, we have Youth Works. I believe they're already on Zoom meeting, and then we have CDIC at 1:45. And that's all we have today as far as meetings.
Excellent.
So the valuation increased an estimated 2.6%. We put in a 4% COLA for all employees January 1, 2022. A 2% market increase April 1, 2022. A step increase for all eligible employees on their seniority date. There's been $2 million included for the capital improvements budget. We have no levy for capital construction because we are going to pay off the bonds this year. So we don't have that. We had 3.94 last year. Or for this year's budget, I mean. The road levy increased from 8.51 mils to 10 mils, the maximum allowed without a vote. We're using $3.6 million in cash. The maximum levy we can levy for the general fund is 60 mils. We're at, with everything included, we're at 48.72 approximately for this year, or for 2022. If we didn't have that cash to offset, we would be at almost 57 mils.
Oh.
Yeah. So we would only have about 3 mils left, or $1 million. Their interim fund has been set at 25%. Health insurance would range, the estimate we were given range from 0 to 5, we put 5 in. There was an employee increase from 75 to 100% in emergency management. The sheriff's rural school resource officer requested at the last commission was added at the net effect of $13,500, and they will not be adding that position if the grant is not awarded. We removed some expenses from the 2022 requests, such as the buildings and grounds tractor and carpet cleaners, the county coroner vehicle, the human services zone chairs. The water resource increased their mills 0.23 mils, and the weed increased 0.92 mils. At the end, extension services budget decreased slightly, or their budget only decreased slightly, but their mills are going to go down 0.66, and that's because they had cash on hand and had to use to offset their budget. So right now, with all the changes that this committee has approved, including the salaries, we're at a decrease in mills of 0.31. That's leaving Youth Works and CDIC at the amounts they got this year.
Well,
and another thing we haven't, that was on the agenda, that $5,000, the Grand Forks Historical Society made that request, and I was directed to put it on this agenda instead, so we still have to talk about the $5,000, whether or not to grant that. And they do want this in addition to the.
They had gotten an increase.
They got an increase of about $20,000, or will, between this year and next year. But they still also wanted to put in the request for this $5,000.
well, I guess the elephant in the room that I'm looking at is, and I don't care because next year I won't be head of this committee, but it'll be all our problems. It looks to me that we're able to keep our mill levy down right now because of our cash that we had used in. That's a one-time deal.
We also put $2 million in the capital improvements.
Right.
So that was double what we.
Right. But it's pretty clear to me, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that next year our mills are going to go up whether we add any increases or not. Is that fair to say?
Well, we don't know what the valuation's gonna do.
True. But I'm looking here from 57 point some mils to 48 point some is about 9 mils difference. Did our cash infusion, is that enough to make up that 9 mils? Is that causing us, you see what I'm saying, is I'm saying next year without our cash, we're gonna have, our mills are gonna be up.
Right?
I was hoping you weren't gonna agree with me.
No, you're exactly right, and so that I just wanted you to be aware of that, what's
Right.
going to happen
Right.
once the cash goes away.
So really, I guess what I'm saying is, we need to be thinking in our budgeting process, not only this year, but next year, because any decisions we make next year, there's probably not gonna be money to pay for our decisions today, and we're gonna have to tax for it.
Yep.
Is there any light at the end of the tunnel, other than maybe the mills will go up next year for the value? That's it.
Yeah, I mean, how much extra will we end up with that, next year at the end of the year, I'm not sure.
Well, if we
You-
have some cash carryover, but we're adjusting that somewhat, so we're not gonna have as much.
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions? Something upbeat maybe. Okay. Even like the extension being down 0.6 helps us. But next year, that's not likely to happen because they bought down with their cash.
That's right.
They're doing the same thing we did.
Yep.
Okay. Well, let's move on. Historical Society. Any thoughts here?
I'm thinking that with the addition of additional cash coming in 21, 22, they wanted the 5,000
They asked for 5,000.
and they're getting how much?
About
from-
$20,000 more they'll get next year.
I think them getting an increase of $20,000 would be adequate instead of looking at an increase of $25,000.
Yeah, I do too. It's, yeah, I mean, they're doing better than most are. I agree. And the other thing that comes to my mind is, Mr. Ford, would they qualify if they have some losses as far as COVID, could they apply?
Commissioner Fall, Commissioner Peach, they would have to demonstrate to the county that their monetary ask is in response to a negative impact as a result of COVID to their budget.
And I'm not sure if they charge fees for some of their programs, and those programs weren't running that. But maybe, you wanna make a note and contact them and see if their cash is down because of that, maybe. Solution for them.
Everything at the end of the day, Commissioner Fall, Commissioner Peach, has to be, can you tie it back to negative impact as a result of COVID, and it has to be proportionate.
Right,
Yes.
but I'm thinking some of their projects were shut down, or there were some things they didn't do that would maybe have brought them some income.
I'll make a
Even though
note.
it's a small amount, it would be a nice one to get back. Okay. Anything else on that topic? Anybody want to go back and talk to Ms. Nelson some more?
Full of
Let's-
good news here.
Pardon me?
I'm full of good news.
I know, we'll work it out.
So I will indicate that the committee indicated to deny the request for $5,000, but to offer the possibility of the American Rescue Plan dollars.
Right. And Mr. Ford can contact them, or they could call Mr. Ford, whatever works for them. He's gonna work himself into an assistant, I can see that coming, but. Budget's tight, Mr. Ford. Let's go on to, let's see, we're a little 5 minutes ahead of time. Is Youth Works, are they on by chance? Yes, they are, I think.
Are they muted?
No,
Thank
this is Melanie Heitkamp. I'm here. And
Okay.
Jeanette Grafseth is with me, our accountant, our chief financial officer.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, well, I'm assuming that you have the budget that we submitted in terms of our programming that is done in Grand Forks and where the Grand Forks County funds are being spent. So the total amount that's being requested from Grand Forks County is similar to last year, which is $35,000. We were able to, so we now have an office in Grand Forks at 311 Kitson Avenue downtown. We have 3 workers right now working out of that office. We did put an anti-trafficking worker in the Grand Forks office as well to serve that north east corridor. And that individual is funded with our grant funds and state funds for human trafficking. The divert worker's been hired. Her name is Katie Dockler. And then Ann Herbeck is continuing to do the day report as well. And then we, over in the emergency shelter, we have Michael Anthony, who had been doing the program before, who kind of is a lead on that. Since the time that we opened our doors, we have in the shelter, we have served 38 youth in emergency shelter through the end of May. So it has been busy in the shelter, which is within walking distance from our office as well. And so our goal is really just to now get these folks kind of settled in and up and running. And that's really happening. We're now receiving referrals from the juvenile court for both divert and day report. And we're planning that summer programming that has historically happened through day report as well. I'm not certain how much detail you want me to go into. We were able to secure a Bremer grant to help us with kind of getting established in Grand Forks, and they were very supportive. So that grant covered a bit. That grant was a $55,000 grant. A good part of that we'll use for rent and utilities and things like that. And we do anticipate that we can continue to apply for Bremer funds to continue to offset some of the programming charges. I'm not certain if you're familiar with what attendant care is. So if you're not, please let me know and I can explain that.
We had a few extra minutes. Go ahead.
Okay, so attendant care really is years ago, and I've been with this kind of programming back when it actually happened, which was probably over 30 years ago. But the Federal Juvenile Justice Act said you can no longer detain in a locked facility youth that are considered unruly, or where if they were charged as an adult, they would not be charged. So they formed a program called attendant care that basically said, we've got to have places for youth to be, youth that are picked up by law enforcement. So when you hear about the attendant care program, the vast majority, probably well over 95% of those youth that are coming in attendant care are being brought in by your law enforcement. They may have been on the run, they may have been picked up for something else, and then they're brought to us to be held over because they cannot reach the parents or it's not feasible for them to return to their home right at that minute. It gets the officer back on the street. And typically it's a county function to do attendant care to be responsible for attendant care because it's in lieu of detention. So it's intended to not have to lock kids up. And if there's too many violations where youth that are not supposed to, don't meet the criteria for detention, if they are locked up, the state can get federal kind of sanctioning that basically could affect federal dollars. So almost in every area, we are the attendant care site in Bismarck and in Fargo and in Minot. And so there's county dollars that go towards attendant care, most of the time through the sheriff's office, but that goes through to serve attendant care youth.
So, and I'll ask our auditor, but, and you, so in essence, what you want is the same $35,000, all right, we contributed last year.
Correct.
I love your attitude.
And you'd like this even better, it's already included.
It's already included. So you're good to go. You're golden right now.
All right, good.
All right, thank you for all your help and what you do for us.
All right, we will be doing an open house, so we'll get you all invitations. So if you want to see the facilities, you can.
Thank you.
Thank you, that'd be
All
great.
right, thank you all.
Take care.
Thanks.
I like their attitude.
Very easy.
Oh. Okay,
Change the attitude.
you know what I'm thinking, Bob.
Yeah, I do.
Anyway, okay. You know, I was thinking about that capital improvements or whatever that we have next year. And of course, we'll have demands and needs, but and maybe it won't be as extensive as I think, but if we have enough money, we might wanna try to fix one of those buildings for the highway department.
Sure.
Yeah, because the following year, we might have to tell them we're not gonna do that.
To use some of the 2
Yeah.
million.
Because we may not, that would be one way that, we gotta find ways to bring that money down this following year, the year, 2023.
They did the Niagara shed
Yeah.
last year. And then what did you want to work on now? Was it,
Inkster ship,
huh?
Inkster.
Inkster, yeah.
We rent that one and so we're looking to. No, we rent the one, God, where is it? We rent one,
Is it Mackinac?
who said that?
Mackinac maybe, is it? That one we talked about not
Yeah.
too long ago.
But we're looking to have that shed for not, have the equipment at the Inkster. I believe.
I'm good, thanks.
That needs to be updated somewhat. And I think Nick has moved work on that one ahead of some of the others. It wasn't intended to be done this next year or this year or whatever, but it's been moved up the.
Well, we can talk to him about that, maybe we can help him out a little bit more next year, and then the following year, he can help us out.
Commissioner Falk, I can maybe continue to add to your good mood because I might ruin it later today, so, with the ARPA funding, since we got a minute, there's a few expenses that will be incurred that we were gonna use CARES funding for,
Then we can use that.
that we could probably use ARPA instead, freeing up some CARES. Debbie and I had talked about that a little bit, and she's got some ideas there, so keep that in mind too. We might be able to find ways to free up more CARES money.
Because the first set is a little bit more non-restrictive than the second set.
Right.
It's more just like economic recovery
Yeah,
for the community or
You know,
whatever.
one great example that Debbie and I learned about in our visits with the city finance team is security upgrades for our building here at the Cobb qualify for ARPA because we have a server physically present in our building. And so that's, and we were gonna take those upgrades out of CARES money. So I'm just saying, there's, again, it goes back to how does the commission want to utilize the ARPA funds, which is a conversation the commission will have, and there's going to be some options.
Well, we want to use it to the best of our advantage because the way it's set up, the county isn't gonna be able to get a whole lot of help out of that, so. So, yeah, so how much is that server system gonna be?
Well, so yeah, so the question, or I'm sorry, the project for Ms. Nelson's area and Ms. Longstad's area, I think that whole thing comes out to be south of 200,000. And then the capital, the Public Safety and Infrastructure Committee had asked Mr. Grzeszewski to look at some pricing options for enhancing security for this building. And he's got some numbers and they're I don't remember the numbers, so I won't say, but they're less than expected. Again, those could come from ARPA instead of CARES.
Make something that we paid out of CARES back to March this year
Yes,
out of
yes,
that.
on March 31st.
Yeah, and so we have to go back, maybe talk to Debbie Swanson about the nursing and
Yes.
split it out, you know,
Yeah.
whatever occurred prior to March 31st and what happened after, and we might revise that bill then to that.
Mhm.
You should have brought that up as positive news instead of.
It was all Debbie, she told me, I'm just the messenger.
Oh, yeah, our ongoing PPE, I think there's still expenses for that can come out there too.
Well, no, yeah, I'm talking about helping Nick on his building if we can. But then the other side of the coin, I'll splash some bad news or whatever, but if we had to, we could, and I think we did talk about that increasing the mill levy for the roads is 2 mills, but we talked about we could go 1 mill, that's for that culvert project he's got going.
I guess I'm not following you when you're talking about that. Oh, so they increased the 1.5, you're saying to increase less?
No, 8 mills to 10 mills on the roads.
Yeah, well, he was currently at 8.51,
Okay, so.
so there was
1.5.
only 1.49.
Yeah, I guess I rounded them up. Okay, you're right. And that's that culvert project he's got going.
Yes, and that's an ongoing thing, and
Yeah.
it's just a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
I mean, it's nowhere near what he needs, so. I don't know, and I don't know that he could ever help us in any way.
Well, the only way I'm saying is try to keep, from the taxpayers' perspective, we try to keep the mill levy somewhat consistent.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's hard to say exactly what's in our,
But the problem is that we probably, let's say we gave it 9.5 mil back to their pond, and the following year, we'd like another half, which we should have. The following year, in my viewpoint, is gonna be the more difficult year than this year, so. I could be wrong, but I hope I'm wrong.
yeah, I mean, we took the capital construction off, that's 3.94 mils right there. And then the decrease in the extension service, 0.66, that won't happen. That's why we're down
The,
because of that.
help me again, the 3.94 mils capital construction, that was on which project?
Correctional center and the courthouse
Of
remodel
course, we'll
project.
be adding that right back on again if we build out there, so. Well, we're gonna have to build out there. There's no good news for that.
No, we can only hope that they decide to increase the levy for the general fund. The legislature does in the future.
Well, it really depends on what Burley and Imperial Cass County have to say, because they're the ones that drive everything, but.
They won't need to. They won't need
They've
it.
got sales tax.
They don't need it. But other smaller counties do,
Mhm.
and they are up against that already.
But although they've got those big projects that aren't gonna be fully funded either. Those diversion programs. They're moving out a batch of houses again.
Yes.
Yeah, but I don't think that comes out of their general fund, they're doing that
No,
all
no.
out of
The state isn't, state funding.
state and federal
State,
money, yeah. So they're moving a bunch of houses.
still that's gotta do something for infrastructure. They're still gonna have to cap lots of gas lines and water and whatever.
The legislature's solution for infrastructure instead of grants was low interest loans.
What about broadband in the Northwood area? Is that still an issue? Or not an issue? You used to hear about that,
Yes.
that's a use for these funds as well.
Now, Nick might get some money. I have no idea how that's all gonna shake out. I think that's where he was saying Bismarck is a little optimistic about money. But if the federal government passes that infrastructure plan, then some of that money may trickle down to the counties. And that's where I'm guessing that I think Nick might get a little money.
Well, and broadband used to be a problem like out in Nelson County when you got to the southern part of Nelson County. Polk County between Polk and Pennington, between Thief River Falls and Grand Forks, dead zones all the time. Broadband is an issue, and I think they need to look at more of where they're setting up their on the ground, you know, their transmitters, and then what they're using up in the sky, because they're not syncing up.
Well, Northwood was an issue during the tornado,
Right.
huge. They had to put a temporary tower up.
Another idea is Amarillo School District is the poorest school district in the state of North Dakota. And money could be used for them somehow.
Out of the recovery money?
Yes.
Yeah, oh, and I wouldn't have any problems with that. There, you know, that, I forget. What we had a presentation or somebody talked to us about.
The boat,
Brandon.
or the backpack.
The Bulldog program was
Yeah.
in.
Yeah, the backpack
Yeah.
program.
That's
They needed
incredible.
money for that.
One good thing about Northwood is they do now have additional access to food, not that it's fresh. But with the Dollar General going in there, there is a store that they can go to purchase items beyond two gas stations. So that
In
is
Northwood?
in
Amarillo.
In Amarillo.
Okay.
So that's helping there. Well, there's one in Northwood too, but that's helping there a little bit because families that are on food support can buy things, cereals, milk, bread, peanut butter, whatever they need at the Dollar General. Whereas it was always considerably higher at the service stations.
Yeah.
And somebody is, I talk with Brandon often about building. And somebody from UAS is interested in being the financer for some housing out there. So, you know, it's kind of like the model, what Hugo's is doing, say there's, I don't know how many units are in there, say there's 24 units, and then you have 4 units that have to be low income. They don't have a choice because of the funding that's coming in through HUD. So if they could do that out there, that would be wonderful.
Wonder if it's for that outfit who wants to come in and do cold weather testing for UAV. We're gonna be here a couple of years doing it.
Well, it was just the name that Brandon mentioned.
Howard Swanson would know for sure, he's their attorney.
That's right, you're right.
I would like to see if we could send, provide some funding orally. With those communities any way we can.
What we could do is, if the commission or the admin services committee wants to, is, have a meeting next week to go through the uses for the county. I sent that list out, and if the committee wants to discuss it. That way, if the commission decides, well, let's look at this, this, and this, then myself and or Ms. Nelson or Ms. Wongstead can start reaching out. The caveat though is they have to request it. So, I mean, for example, if the commission wants to provide some ARPA funding to the Amarillo School District for Bulldog Basics, they would submit a letter to the commission requesting it. So there are, in reading through those documents, there are some good things the commission can do.
You know, when it talks about poverty in there, it's not necessarily the loss from COVID.
No, not for
It's just
poverty.
Poverty.
It is correct. So for the loss for COVID really applies to nonprofits. Yeah, so if, again, CVSC is a great example. If they request ARPA funds, they have to show us as a county they've lost revenue because of COVID. Then there's support for small businesses. So there's a request coming to the county to help with the small business development centers keep on funding their technical advisement program. And that program was created specifically and only to respond to small businesses to help prevent them from shuttering their doors because of COVID. So there are ways to help the small communities, businesses, if there's ongoing vaccination efforts that public health needs financial support for, the county ARPA funds can go to, there's quite a few ways.
And we don't wanna spend it in small increments either, because it'll be a reporting nightmare.
Yeah.
That would be my thought, is the commission meet next week to review and discuss and prioritize and go from there.
Well, and if we're meeting at the same time, we could figure out just do administrative services committee meeting, but then have a full commission meeting just to deal with the two items that were left from last Tuesday.
Yeah, we're still,
Fireworks and.
I haven't, well, like I said, I have not looked at one email, there's probably 100 of them, right? Emails from today that I haven't looked at, so maybe Ryan did comment about that. And I think he would comment to me because
Yeah.
I sent it out. So maybe it's there and I just haven't had a chance to even look.
And I haven't.
Oh, there's only 51 I haven't seen. There's nowhere near 100.
Not yet.
Yeah, we're kind of waiting for Ryan Reesinger,
Reesinger, yes.
yeah, Reesinger to respond, and then sheriff.
Great.
Tomorrow morning at 9. I have nothing. Did you see Sawyer's note back? He sent the same note to the mayor. They did job.
Oh, yeah, which I don't quite understand, but.
I've been telling anyone and everyone who listen to me that this is gonna happen 6 months before that election happens. Gee, here we are.
We are.
Well, I'd like to keep the guy happy. Tell him I'm good with time, as long as it's got coffee.
There you go. Maybe we should do it here and then we can Zoom David and he doesn't have to come to town.
I'm guessing he's on the road maybe tomorrow.
Yeah.
We'll wait for him to respond.
$20,000 for veterans today. From
Say,
the Red River Valley.
yeah, for the motorcycle group, yeah, I knew that yesterday, that it was coming.
Yeah, I brought it over there. Al Palmer was there listening. We got
What
30,000
meeting was it, the Red River Valley meeting?
motorcycle out over at the Eagles last night.
Yeah, cause Al called me from there.
Yeah. And they got another 600 and some dollars for ticket sales or whatever, so
That's wonderful.
I got 30,000 for the memorial, law enforcement memorial.
How far away are you from?
We're actually 10,000 over our projection.
Wow.
We wanted 250, we're at 260.
You will need it.
Oh, yeah,
Need it. There's always
That's wonderful.
yeah. So it's always gonna be an ongoing thing with Red River for you guys, for us.
Well, they've already donated over 100,000, right at 100,000.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fundraising.
So I think our bids come out next Tuesday from Icon. So we hope to get all the cement work done this summer. The granite and statue and stuff won't get it till next summer.
Hi.
Hello, come on in.
For us or short or late? Yeah.
No, come
No,
on in.
you're good.
No, we're caught up.
I will click.
You will click for us?
Yep, I will click.
Okay.
Oh, I see. Never mind. That's a different subject, yeah.
Thank you.
I know. I know, but we're not usually like this.
I know. That's why I was waiting over in the red room.
Yeah. You lighten it up quick.
I'll do my best.
Tom Ingham is on the road today, I know that.
Okay.
Taking his daughters to,
Yeah, but the question, Minneapolis, whether he'll be back to,
yeah,
my, they have a lot of friends down there. Okay, why don't you begin?
Okay.
Oh, I didn't see you on there, I'm sorry.
You miss me? Oh my God.
Okay, no problem.
Well, I was not with you last time, so I do appreciate the grace. Have a significant other with a father on the mend, so I appreciate your grace on that. So I just want to step through, I want to thank you for letting us come back with a little bit more detail. We actually have two requests for you today. One would be the annual contract, and we have quite a bit more meat on the bones than we did last time, so I hope that helps. And then I really do appreciate all the extra phone calls and emails in between the last conversation we had with you, as well as the proposal you sent from the COVID relief funding. We also have a separate request on that. So I'm ready for the next. I'm not used to not having control, so. Okay, so this slide here, what you see in front of you is really what makes up our little over $6 million budget. The bulk of which is comprised of grants. 35% is federal grants and 34% is private grants. I will tell you that over half of the private grants make up Margaret A. Cargill, Otto Bremer Trust, and Engelstead, so pretty substantial private funders funding that. And the state budget, as you can see, is quite small in comparison. The contracts, of course, this is the county and city contract, as well as a little bit of UND. And then fundraising comprises a little over $1 million. We are pretty proud of the fact that last year during COVID, we did break $1 million as an agency. That was the first time in our history doing that. But we have had some challenges with that, which I'll go into in just a second. And then the endowment distribution, we are fortunate. We have $1 million endowment that we're able to draw on every year as well. Any questions on the revenue side of things? Okay, on the expenses, of course, being a primarily service-driven industry, we have almost 80% of our budget is made up of people. We have over 80 employees now on staff. I think when this relationship started, we had a little over 25, so it looks quite a bit different than it did in the beginning. Occupancy makes up over 370,000, materials and operating almost 900,000, client assistance almost 150,000, and that is pretty much our expenses. The next slide is a pie chart of how our resources are structured. We are very proud of the fact that our overhead is quite low compared to GuideStar, which is 25%. So 17% there, with the majority of it going to program. And with that, I'm going to have Laura step you through what we've tried to do for you today is break this down into really the black and white of what CDIC is providing the commission of the county in terms of the core programs that support the North Dakota Century Code. So with that, I'll hand it off to Laura.
So we'll start with the Pathways Toward Justice program, and this program primarily is their job descriptions are really defined by the fair treatment standards for victims and witnesses that's in our North Dakota Century Code, and that comprises of over 22 different rights and responsibilities that victims of crime have for as their case is going through the criminal justice process. And that includes things like notifications for charges filed, every hearing, cancellations of hearing, plea agreement, victim impact statements, restitution, and it also includes juvenile court as well. Currently, we have 4.75 FTEs in that program. That includes 4 specialists, part of an administrative assistant, and then a little bit of my time as well. And in a typical year, we serve close to 1,200 clients, crime victims in that program. And to just give you a little bit of some perspective about how that program has evolved, about 10 years ago, we served about 677 clients in the program with 2 Pathways Toward Justice staff. Now we're serving in a regular year about 1,200 clients. So it's nearly doubled in the number of clients served, as well as in December 2016, Marcy's Law was passed. And that really changed some things with notifications. We now have to get involved as soon as charges are filed. And if they assert Marcy's their Marcy's rights, there are additional things that we didn't do before, like post-sentencing notifications, appeals, order to show cause, revocations, and things like that. So that has not increased, Marcy's Law did not increase the caseload, but it did increase the number of contacts that we needed to make. And then you can see in red there that the CDIC funded portion of this program is a total of $205,000. Now, in 2022, we did project that we would hire an additional Pathways specialist, but right now, looking at our numbers, we don't believe that that position will be necessary, and we will likely defer that to down the road based on program need. And then looking at some of those outcomes, last year with the court closure, the CDIC served 1,043 victims of crime. And made nearly 4,000 contacts to collaborating professionals. We held attended about 1,200 court hearings, as well as 14 trials. And just to give you kind of a picture of what kinds of things the specialists do, in a recent case that's going through the system right now is the Pendleton trial, which you are all aware of. Cody Holtby's murder, and that alone for the types of notifications that the specialists are doing involves 3 officers who were directly involved in the incident and are considered crime victims. and as well as their spouses or significant others. And then Cody Holte's wife, his parents, immediate family members, and then Lola Moore, who was Pendleton's mother, was also murdered, and there are family members directly related to her. So in a trial, when there are different hearings and things, those specialists are making sure that all of those people are informed. We also have an entire police department and sheriff's department who are kind of those secondary people, and we do get calls as well from them wondering about status updates and things like that. And then the last thing I would say is on this program is that we had about 61% of the cases that reached disposition, the victims participated in that criminal justice process, either directly or through the specialists themselves. And what we know is that when we provide crime victims with adequate support and they're involved in the process, that we don't lose them. And that equates to better outcomes and more wins for the state's attorney's office. And so, again, that's an important role that we play at CBIC. And then looking at our supervised visitation and exchanges, this statute relates specifically to when when a court deems that a child's physical or emotional safety might be at risk, they can court order the supervised visitation for contact with the other parent. And so this is separate from foster care and child abuse. We served a total of 445 individuals in that program in total, and CBIC contributed a little over $224,000 through fundraising and et cetera. As far as outcomes, we served 262 individuals. So the 445 was full program, 262 individuals were court ordered visitation or exchanges, and 183 individuals were served through the Human Service Zone referrals. And then our violence intervention program, which is really our New Choices program, it falls under the statute of mandated domestic violence treatment for domestic violence offenders. And the statute says that in certain crimes, the court must order them to an assessment and to follow the treatment recommendations of a domestic violence specific program, not anger management. And so we offer those services to the court ordered participants primarily. And then in 2018, we also, related to this, the Supreme Court established Grand Forks County as a domestic violence court. And that statute also says that persons who are convicted of certain crimes and or protection order violations must be ordered for an assessment into domestic violence treatment.
Question,
Yes, sir.
did the Supreme Court provide any money for that program?
No, they did not.
Thank you.
So in that program, they've served 350 clients over the 2 years that they've been operational. And some of the, go to the next slide, some of the outcomes of that program. We document when individuals complete that program. Most people think of it, and we call it domestic violence intervention, but it really is prevention of future calls related to domestic violence. And that program shows that 2 years out after an individual has completed domestic violence intervention, that there is a 90% decrease in the number of 911 calls. So that directly relates to the number of calls that our law enforcement is reacting to. And there's also a 74% decrease in the number of 911 calls to their home following treatment. So just to kind of sum up those three main areas, the total contribution of CBIC funds to those three programs is $725,000, which is just under, we're asking the county for just under a third of that unfunded portion outside of grants and other things. And so I'm going to pause here just to see if there's any questions on the programmatic side of things before I turn it back to Koya to talk about some of the COVID impact and that that particular funding.
Anybody have any questions? Okay, proceed.
Okay, so the next portion of the presentation is specific to the American Rescue Plan Act. So if you have time to read the, I think it's 60 pages, isn't it? Maybe 70.
Fire 53.
Yeah, it was long. I needed new ink after I took a stab at that. So it does want you to, the good thing about it is that some of the, if you qualify for PPP, this is likely a fit as well. So we are grateful to read through and find that we are a fit for this. It appears, at least on paper. So if you go to the next slide, I kind of wanted to set the stage for why we believe this is a fair request. We have had, as you know, we have not had a breakfast now for, it'll be 2 years. Our next in-person breakfast will be in September. We did pretty decently about almost a year ago to the day, actually. We did our first virtual event in Grand Forks and did over a little over 100,000. Where it gets challenging is that breakfast is used as a primary tool to introduce new donors, and we often ask for new dream makers. So those are folks, some of you in this room actually, who give $1,000 or more a year. And if you compare it to 19, we had almost 50 of those. So many of them give more than $1,000, but just to give you perspective, last year we had 8 new dream makers. So that definitely has an impact on the perpetuity of that. Celebrity Night does okay. It's more of a touch point with our donors, but obviously we weren't able to do that as well. The other thing I would tell you, because I do want you to understand that we are very, I am very focused on trying to continue to prepare major gifts. So that's beyond events. You will hear nonprofits talk a lot about events and how we didn't get to our event, so we lost out on this revenue. And that is true. However, to sustain a $6 million program and to solve a problem of 1,700 kiddos with severe trauma, we're going to need more than a special event. So our team is very committed to doing that. I was on the phone with Haley when I was on the way to Minneapolis, meeting with some donors there who care about Grand Forks. Made a couple trips to Fargo already. So the challenge last year is many donors didn't even want to meet with us in person. So now I feel almost like I'm a year behind. This is my 2nd year with the agency. So I do want you to know I'm certainly not asking the county to solve all of our problems, but we are committed to continue to push that button, because we've been around for 40 years and we believe we have at least 20 or 30 years left to work. So I have 20 years left to do. So we're very committed to that. So to give you an example of that, Giving Hearts Day 2 years ago did about 40,000. The last 2 years it's done over 100,000. So we really are trying to do our part to supplement this funding. The other thing I would tell you, because I'm fortunate to deal with people who have wealth, that a fair amount of donors, when the administration changed, they have changed how their financial outlook looks. They might be making decisions on cutting back their pledge, trimming their pledge. And so there's just a lot of uncertainty around the market right now. And so we're definitely feeling the impacts of that. But if you look at the next slide, yep, this one. So this gives you a breakdown of how our fundraising. So if we go back to that original chart I showed you that had more than $1 million of fundraising, this is how it kind of breaks out. So the appeals, the 143,000 you see here, over 114,000 of that was Giving Hearts Day. Our donations, which is those major gifts that we're asking for, is over $500,000. Special events, as you can see, a pretty distinct difference there with the perpetuity of the pledges. And then the parking lot, we're fortunate that one of our major donors gifts his pledge, his parking funds to us. So pretty significant difference of almost $500,000. And so that's how we're arriving at the ask of $500,000. The next slide just breaks out for you. We wanted you to see that we did qualify for 2 rounds of the PPP funding. It has helped my blood pressure, but it certainly does not solve every problem for the future. And then the last slide here just sort of breaks out, we in nonprofits would be remiss if we didn't share with you the impact on people. There are people behind these numbers. So this gives you an idea of what the pandemic has done for the folks in Grand Forks County. A 28%, almost 30% increase in sexual assaults, almost over 160 people. Our shelter stays have gone up significantly. I want to say it was 13%. So this represents the nights in shelter compared to 19. And then of course, our clients are experiencing many of the challenges that our neighbors are experiencing, loss of jobs, different challenges around basic needs, food, rent, gas. So about this time last year, a donor approached us and asked if his friends would match dollar for dollar. I think we raised about $8,000. The money was gone in less than 90 days. So he came back and said, let's do another round. So this 11,000 represents our donors who came forward in the pandemic to try to step up and help these basic needs. And then in addition to the 3% increase of the clients served during the pandemic, which we believe is a very conservative number, considering that our folks were locked in many cases with their offenders. And so we think that's a quite conservative number. The other thing I'd tell you is that the violence has gone incredibly very severe, a lot more broken bones, trips to the ER. Our sexual assault response team has been busy. So I would just ask you to consider that as well as we come forward with this request today. And I truly do want to say, as a newcomer, I love it here. I came from Fargo, and I'm truly just really impressed with the teamwork that goes into some of these types of decisions. Tom and I had a very lively discussion a couple of weeks ago, and I appreciated his candidness. I appreciate that he let us be candid with you. But we just want you to know that this is kind of the black and white of the challenge. We're willing to do our part. And if this $500,000 is available within these American Rescue dollars, we'd really appreciate it.
Any questions? Mr. Word? No.
I think
Did you have a question?
it just on the article, but if you had something, go ahead.
I was gonna ask, the last time you came, you had asked for the same 220,000. And we had explained that 85,000 was paid out of our general fund and 83,000 came out of our human service zone. And we know that you're going to make another request from them. So 220 from Grand Forks County, and we paid 85 last time. And so then you're going to make an additional request from the human service zone. And so these numbers that are here, are they all related to the services that are provided just for the state attorney?
No.
Are they provided for the human service zone as well?
No.
No?
No, so the summary page, I forget what slide it is, but if you click forward here to the slide that had the 1.4 million, the summary at the top. So this is a summary of the 3 core programs that have a direct connection to the county.
Is it the human service zone as well? The services that, like, it used to be called the Wishing Well program. Is that included in here?
That's the supervised visitation and exchange.
And it is included in here?
So the slide, you are correct that the slide showing the total funding for that program, which is slide 7, that is both county and
It's human service.
human service zone. But then the second slide, we break out how many individuals are court ordered and how many we are serving through the human service zone. So it's 262 that are court ordered and 183 that are served through the human service zone contract.
I know there was a little bit confusion last time that the 220 was all a general fund request. And really it was split almost 50-50 between the general fund
This is
and
about 167, I think,
Yeah.
the current contract. And we did not ask for an increase last year. I mean, that was intentional with everything going on.
But the question I'm asking is, was the 220 thinking that it was also the $83,000 that was coming out of the human service zone?
Yeah, kind of where we're coming from that on that is the entire contract, the 167,000 doesn't even cover one program. So even though we are, I understand there's this 80K coming from the state, it's still a county, it's still a Century Code accountability that we're supporting and have been for a long time. It's just, we are just like, this commission has to make tough calls about your employees and resources that you have. I'm doing the same thing. Laura hasn't had a raise for 5 years. I have a senior team, half of them have not had a raise for 5 years. I have about $160,000 problem with just getting my people to market, which I cannot do. You want to talk about midpoint, that's another 150,000. So, and I know I'm singing to a very large choir here. It's challenging because we have continued to, this relationship means a lot to us. It means a lot to Grand Forks, and as you can see by the digits, it means a lot to the people who've been impacted. And we've continued to fund it because we're CVIC. But I think we're at that dollars, and as I told Commissioner Falk, I come from a corporate background and I was raised by a small business owner. So I understand that sometimes we have to make tough decisions, and as painful as it is, I have that pain too. And I don't want to be telling my staff this, but we're at that point because COVID's hopefully never going to happen again. And so all this PPP and all of that has been a godsend to a number of business owners, but I don't think it's going to happen again. I don't think a $1.2 million is going to just dump into our bank. So we have to make those tough calls. And like I said, we're going to continue to do our part privately, but this has been a long-standing relationship, and it does mean a lot to us, but it's come with a price. I hope that's fair. I'm saying that was long.
Well,
I mean, I was just trying to get clarification because there was a misunderstanding last time that all the funds were coming from the general fund.
Yeah, I think actually I was just informed of that recently. I did not know that last year, actually.
Yeah.
I think that change happened about 2 years ago, probably about the time I got here. So I still have a lot to learn about Grand Forks County.
well, and I know you have, I'm always blunt, you know that, but I know you haven't been here very long, so you maybe haven't looked at it, but you know, it seems to me that the business model of your program might need some adjusting. But you know, when we talked, today you indicated you had 80 employees. That's the same number that we have employed in all of social services. Your budget is $6.3 million. That's over twice as much as the state's attorney's budget. And my guess is probably nearing the sheriff's office budget, or maybe even more. I couldn't find that. But you have an incredible number of employees. So, you know, I think maybe there's an area you're gonna have to look at that you can just, you know, Ms. Wamstead, she'd like more prosecutors, more secretaries. That's not gonna happen.
Well,
She
we're
might need 'em,
supporting,
but
I
it
think,
isn't gonna
13,
happen.
yeah, there's 13 or 14 employees though, Commissioner Falk, that we're or attorneys that we're supporting too.
Well, I know that. I know that. I worked in that office for 6 years, so. But we may too. So, but you know, the problem that I see for us as a group here is that we only have one source of revenue, and that's the tax dollars. And Burleigh County, Cass County, they have sales tax. We do not. All we have is income tax or income, real estate tax. So it really is very difficult for us. And we've made a conscious decision that we're going to somehow work with our employees this year, and we're losing them at a rate that I've never seen before. In the state's attorney's office, we never lost people. They're losing them now, same with the sheriff's department. So we have to stop that because first of all, it's not good for those departments, and it costs us a lot of money to train those people. You know, if we have a trained prosecutor and we lose them, it's not good for victims when they get somebody that's fresh out of law school instead of someone that's done 15 years of prosecution. So the money issue is a problem. Now, I think that we can help you or work with the money through the federal government programs. That should put you back on somewhat of an even scale, I think.
For 2022.
2022. 2023, I'll be honest with you, and we've talked before you came, is gonna be even more difficult for us than right now. Because we've been able to cash carry forward to take care of some things to not push the mill levy. And I'm concerned about the taxpayers. If the school district bond issue passes, which I hope it does, but the average home in town is gonna go up $360 a year, not counting what we or the city do. So I think it behooves us that we have to be very careful on that.
When I guess I feel a little comfort is if the American Rescue Plan could give us some relief. I mean, that would give us a year to literally pound the pavement with more major gift funding.
Well, sometimes.
I can't overpromise. I can say it would give me breathing room.
Sometimes the numbers confuse me, but you know, right now you're budgeting without that money, but that money is about $500,000. So if that would come through, that almost would be 2 years of whatever you're requesting, you know, if you somehow use it
Well, and that's what I'm saying is
carefully.
painful as this is for me to tell a partner, I'm gonna have to pull up my Excel spreadsheet too and start thinking about which programs we're gonna support and which ones I'll probably be coming back to you saying which one means the most to you, as painful as that is for me to say. Because there's, as you can see, there's people behind that number. And you know, like Haley, we have a tremendous relationship with her. We get results because of this relationship. So I don't want to let it go, but I also have, you know, folks counting on me too, and they're getting tired of me saying, and all they talk about is 2017 when we had to lay people off and cut back hours, and you know, I'm doing my darndest to make sure that doesn't happen on my watch, but it might. But I just, you know, we have to make tough decisions as well. So.
How many full-time prosecutors apply only to CBIC cases?
Or,
That's all they.
That's our personal crimes team, so there might, probably all those cases, yeah, would involve CPA. One thing I would just add is CBIC also provides victim services on property crimes cases, which there's 5 attorneys actually on that team.
Well, and I'll lay this off on you. When I was there, we wrote letters ourselves. Can the attorneys do that themselves? I'm sorry, that's the way it went.
With Marcy's law, the requirements on victim notification and kind of some of the hand holding, for lack of better terms, if we were to take that burden on in our office, it would be significant. The services provided pre-COVID were much different than they are now. Peggy's team wouldn't provide their services on post convictions, on appeals, on a lot of property crimes. It was more limited to the domestic violence, the sexual assaults. Now it applies to all of those case types.
Any questions?
I have just one, Mr. Chair,
Excellent.
on the ARPA, Ms. Tompkins.
No one?
On the ARPA funding, the 500, it was about 495,968 of essentially lost fundraising revenue because of COVID. So there's just a point of clarification as we go down that path. We'll just round up and say 500,000 that CBIC was unable to raise because of COVID was a significant disruption in your services clients reached in programs. That's correct? That's all I
And
need to-
I'm so sorry, I need to ask a question about this. We are curious, we weren't clear, Mr. Ford, when we read the language, there's a timeline in there of 2024. So part of my question is, can I stretch this out, or does it all have to be spent in?
We as a county have to have it spent within, what is it, December 31st, 2024, and whatever is not spent goes back. So,
We'll have no problem.
Well, it would seem that you could spend it in some of your other donations, you could set aside for future use or whatever is my guess. But
Yeah, if we're fortunate to receive this funding, we do plan to stretch it as far as we can.
because that would be, Mr. Chairman, it's inappropriate use.
Ms. Nelson, so I think you confused me, but I'm not. How much money came out of our budget last year for CBSC?
There was 85,903 out of the general fund.
Okay.
But then there was 81,400 out of the human service zone. But passed to the state.
Right, but and then and then the request today is how much? 200,
220.
And that is only for Grand Forks County. They're also making a separate request to the human service zone.
for their 81,000. So they want to go from 85,900 to 220 from us
Yes.
out of the general fund.
Yes.
Well, we'll take it under advisement. It's going to be very difficult for us to come up on the general fund.
I feel for the commission and what you're going through. We're losing employees to Cass County, Minneapolis, the county, UND, so I understand. And as you know, I mean, if you look at a therapist, for example, they can make about $120 in private practice, 120,000. We pay them, we pushed hard to pay them about 75,000. That's before their benefits package, which is another 20. So we're making $100,000 investment when we talk about the healing services of what we're doing. So I do understand, and I really just feel for what the commission's going through. So you wouldn't respect me if I didn't ask. So
How about the therapist, can't you receive, or your clients receive that through other agencies, social services? Are there any other?
not for free.
For free?
I mean, they have to pay for that. I don't know if you've had a therapist lately, but they're not cheap.
I haven't, but maybe I should, I guess.
I don't have you personally, I just mean I didn't mean that.
I knew you didn't need it.
Sorry.
Okay,
They're expensive.
anything? Commissioner Pete?
The 220,000 that you are looking at for 2022, how much of that is looking for some recovery for 2020?
Can you just ask that again?
Okay, the 220,000 that you're asking for of Grand Forks County.
Mhm.
This is for 2022. How much of those funds are for recovery from, say, 2021 or 2020 because of the pandemic?
Oh, well, I mean, this, as you can see, I mean, that 220,000 would barely cover the support we're offering for Haley's program. So it's just what it takes. It costs about, just to use that example, that costs about almost $500,000 to run the program. And we're supplementing it to 205,000. So that's just the cost of doing the program and cost of doing the business.
Okay, thank you.
And of course, I'll note this, 90% of those cases come out of the city, not out of county residents, so. Okay,
And I know, because I think someone will ask me, I did request, additional dollars from the city. It's actually almost identical to this number, so I have not received word. I did get, a positive possibility from Mr. Phelan, but, this is the same amount I'm asking from the city. If that helps.
well, it's easier for them, they have sales tax, it's kind of a irritant here, so.
I hear ya.
So anyway, okay, well, thank you for coming over.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
You know, I think part of this program's success has been so many times they have written for funding, whether it's been philanthropy, state, federal funding. They've gotten the funds because their ideas were collaboration, working with the county, the zone, and so they would get these wonderful pilot grants to operate or start these programs. Once you got through your pilot grant, which may be 2 or 3 years, then you get to your year of just operating. And the feds and philanthropic organizations do not want to fund the same old. If you come with a new idea, they want to fund the new idea, great. But after the new idea is part of your program, and then you figure out how to pay for it. And that's typical of grant writing. So they're at the point where, yes, the pandemic did come in, but they're fighting to hold programs that they wish they want to keep going. Number of staff, well, you know, probably all 80 staff are not full-time. There's many part-time and many, I would assume with 80 staff.
That's a pretty high number there, but I mean, it's way, and their staffing is way too high.
Well, 25% admin is high too. Although NDSU is 232 or so, I mean, I think Grand Forks UND is right around 28%.
Well, I just look at their numbers compared to social services, even the county, the 80 employees we have, if we throw social services out, because they're kind of a hybrid state, whatever, we only have 240, I asked Michelle. They have 1/3 of the employees that we have, and we have roads, bridges, veteran service, the correctional center, high volume offices. So I think their business plan needs to be looked at, and I think you're right. That's the danger of these grant programs, and we have to be careful that we don't fall into that too, because you raise that on the sheriff's one, and that's a valid point. That we start down that road and all of a sudden we own that program, and at the end of 4 years, we've got another $100,000 on the taxpayer's bill. And they're all great programs, we just have to decide which ones are better than others, because we can't have them all. So
I think to her point is that if they don't get the 220, they're gonna cut some programs. Which is right.
Particularly after
Oh,
this pandemic,
Yeah, we'll
there's
have to
a
figure
lot more,
something else out.
there's a lot more stress on
but
people.
everybody starts programs. Now they've got the court program. That's why I asked her, is there any money coming from the Supreme Court to pay for that program? They just mandate it, and then somehow we have to fund it. Well, there is the taxpayer. I'll tell you, some of these programs, if you put them to a vote and down, they go down, they wouldn't get 20% of the vote. So I don't.
But then when you're looking at women and children, this is some of our most vulnerable individuals in our community.
Well, I don't disagree.
You know, and I don't know, you know, if they monitor the clients that they serve. are they, you know, are they some coming from Minnesota, are some coming from Polk County? Are some coming from Grafton, from Walsh County, Nelson County? I don't know that. You know, I can't say. It's no different than like our homeless shelters. You know, they're trying to find somewhere for safety, for some assistance. The only other one that I'm aware of in Northwest Minnesota is the Violence Intervention Program in Thief River Falls. And then you don't see any type of violence intervention for women until you get to Bemidji or to Fargo. So what are people doing in Norman County? What's going on in Red Lake County? You know, are they going north? Those are issues.
Well, I'll throw this out. I'll suggest that we look at raising them to $100,000 from 85.9, which is actually about 18%. And nobody is getting anywhere near that other than CBIC. So I mean, they should be ecstatic because the rest of our people are being made to get by with far less.
But that's now not going to include what goes on with the county, with the zone.
The zone,
Because
no.
that's going to be a separate
Right,
item
right,
with Scott's budget.
right. And I guess we don't control that, but you know, I just can't see us coming up with more money than that. When I started here, I was prepared to give them, you know, the 2% that everybody else is getting. And I told Ms. Tompkins that too, that, you know, if we take from this, the only place I see we find that money is employee salaries, because that's where the chunk is.
Yeah, and you were right. In most of the cases, 85% are in the city of Grand Forks. So and they do have a sales tax. They can pay the 200.
And I was right, when I did work, the attorneys wrote their own letters and took care of all of that.
Yeah.
One thing I would say though is, like I mentioned, that the obligation on the Marston's law is a lot more significant.
I think everybody has to get to the point where you marshal your assets on how much of that you actually have to do with. You know, everybody likes to take up a lot of time, and that costs the taxpayers money, but so. You know, this will go back a lot of years too. I'm dating myself, but 20 years ago or 25 years ago, probably, we were going to hire Peggy Love, it was right after she started there, and make her a full-time employee in the state attorney's office, and CBIC didn't want that. Now, as I look back, I think maybe that's what we should have done, or the county should have done, and then just added a person every 4 or 5 years, and we would have taken care of that. They would have been on our, and then we would control how much work they do. You've got more full-time equivalents over there working Marcy's law than you've got prosecutors on it. And I'm sorry, but the attorney has a lot more responsibility and work than writing letters and getting a hold of people. So they've got too many people in that spot.
And I don't know what their entry level victim witness advocate makes, but I would be concerned that if we took on those services that based on the county's pay scale, it would cost us more to have them as our own employees than to contract with CBIC.
Yeah, I don't doubt that.
Peggy's maybe an exception because she's got that longevity, but
Well, I would agree with the approval of the $100,000.
Were you thinking along those lines of
I certainly couldn't fathom us going to the total, no. And I'm sorry, I mean, I think they're all wonderful programs, but we've got to find some other funding sources to come in to help them be successful.
Well, and I should have suggested this. Maybe they need to, I had it written down and I didn't say this to Ms. Thompson. It's Tompkins, is it?
Tompkins.
Will it be Tompkins? Yeah. Anyway, maybe they and the rest of the CBIC associations in the state need to go to the legislature and get a mill levy, just like the highway department and everybody else has. And that would make it a whole lot simpler, and they operate off of, you know, however much money the state gives them, and we know how generous they are. So,
Yeah, you know, it's an ongoing issue and it's not going to change.
Yeah.
You know, we're going to continue to see, because of just historically, families that do get into domestic violence, they just continue to repeat generation after generation after generation, which is unfortunate. It'd be great to say, yeah, we could decrease the amount of domestic violence in there, but the more stress on families, and I would assume that the amount of stress that has taken place when parents were working at home and their kids were at home and there was no childcare, I'm sure that it was just very extreme stress for families that they hadn't had to deal with before, because they went off to work and children went to school or childcare or whatever the case may be. So I would assume that there has been a large increase of domestic violence happening.
I think they could sell a mill levy at the legislature, but they'd have to be a lot more well, but realistic on their numbers. They have it because the legislature is going to say the same thing that we've been saying here or talking about, and especially when you get west of I-29. And but they could maybe get 1 mill or 2 mills or something like that to support them, and then still raise money outside of the community. I think that's the answer.
And that would be to take care of all the responsibilities that the county has currently.
They'd have a funding source. I'm gonna talk to her about that, see if she can't get that started
Be good if they could do it as a
statewide.
statewide.
Yeah, and it would be outside of our 60 mills or whatever, if they got 2 mills or whatever, you know, and then what's a mill raises, 300,000?
332.
See, if they can get 2 mills, they'd raise $600,000 a year. Then they'd have to make up the rest of their funding, but that, which is a lot, because they're running over a $6 million budget. But, you know, the legislature, if they saw that Grand Forks was getting $600 and some thousand for CBIC, they would think that would be enough to run that program.
Do you think
Totally.
she'll come back and say what program should we cut?
No, I don't think
She said that.
Yeah, but there has to be a business plan that's really looked at to determine where's the dollars that you have and what's the best bang for your buck. I hate to say it like that, but there are some programs that tend to be more cost heavy than others. And not to say that this particular client isn't any less important than this particular client, but you've got to look at the dollars. You have to look at, you know, where are you really getting the bang for your buck? And I think after you did that, and certainly there are small business administration, there are different entities that would be more than happy to help figure that out. Just to look at it strategically, just from a dollar standpoint. And then as the administrator, you'd see with the dollar standpoint, and then you have to kind of ration out. What makes it the hardest is you have an individual who was there as an employee for 2 or 3 years before she became the administrator. So some of the staff that are there are her friends. Were her friends, her coworkers, and now she's the one who is possibly going to be left determining who stays and who goes. And that's a hard thing to do. That's a very hard thing to do.
They have cut programs in the past because of budgetary issues.
Of course, but, yeah, go ahead.
Well, with Christy Hall Geron leaving, maybe some of those donation dollars went with her,
Okay.
because that hospital's got a problem.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, Christie's very effective.
yeah,
Well, you know, and I don't think they have to worry about necessarily cutting employees. My thought is with 80 employees, you have enough attrition in the year that you can just rotate. You know, I'm sure they have 4 or 5 people like we do every year, maybe more, leaving. So those are the jobs you eliminate and move somebody else in that slot. So you don't really have to cut people. You just. So anyway, are we done now?
We're done.
I didn't like the way she said that. We're done.
We're done. There's nobody else to meet with. I can bring this to you probably the second meeting in July for preliminary approval. It has to be done by August 10th.
Well, do you want to bring it to the commissioner? Or do you want to bring it to this committee and then, well, we could, I don't know.
So
I don't
what
want-
I presented today, so what you increased the $15,000 or $14,100, that could be absorbed in the cash. I mean, it's a very small amount, and this could be it right here.
Well, because I was making notes and I was going, well, we were gonna give the 2% market increase April 1st. Do we have to move that to June 1st or,
Oh,
I mean, there are a lot of things we could do. I mentioned Nick, do we want to give him the full 1.5 mils? I think we need to give him the culverts. That's a mess.
it is, and I don't know that we can fix it even with that small amount.
No, he's gonna have to use some of his state money or that oil money.
Infrastructure money will come in.
If it comes through.
Prairie dog.
That's,
Yeah, there will be some, I think,
Oh,
yeah,
gosh.
and hopefully there'll be some prairie dog money. You can use some of that also.
so we talk about it at the federal level is infrastructure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
right.
nobody's
If
agreeing.
nothing else comes through, it'll be infrastructure.
So,
And that's important.
well, let's leave it April 1st on the employees in our figures, and then we'll decide after you get it all put together, if we have to move that, or if we have to take a 0.5 mil off Nick or whatever. I'm not so concerned now, but I am concerned here.
Probably we need to at least set our next administrative services meeting. We do need to have a special commission meeting with a couple items that we didn't finalize on Tuesday. But if we're coming together as administrative services to talk about some of the COVID funding, it would make sense just to do that commission meeting right away and then just either have administrative services first and a quick commission meeting or a quick commission meeting and then have administrative services at the same time.
So you're thinking now, I got my handy dandy. Now,
Well,
are you thinking like this, when were you talking, Debbie, the 6th or the 20th?
The second meeting in July, I would like to have a preliminary approval of the budget, so it'd be done by August 10th.
So maybe we should meet like as administrative services at 3, is that what you're thinking, Cindy?
no, because some of those events were taking place
Oh,
the
we have to have
28th
it. We
of
have
June
to-
and the
Oh,
30th.
that's, yeah, those, I'm talking about our budget.
Oh, the
We want-
budget thing.
Yeah, just to talk about.
Yeah, the budget thing would be fine, but then we still have to have the discussion amongst the commission. Either in administrative services to have a discussion about those recovery funds and kind of what our ideas and thoughts are before we would go to meet with the city. And that was asked for like by the end of this month.
And Commissioner Peach, I think you're right, sooner than later, because there are requests coming in.
Yeah.
For those funds too.
And so I think that it's important for us just to have a little time to kind of go over and get a feel for what we're looking at. I mean, not many itsy bitsy ones, but things that are gonna have an impact. And then try to get something scheduled. That fast meeting we have to have before the very end of the month, but this other discussion that we need to have relative to COVID funding, that should also take place before the end of the month. And I know we've got one whole week and a half a week here that all of a sudden it's July 1. So and I know.
Well, we can put the mayor off, and it doesn't have to be the end of
No,
June,
it doesn't
his-
have to be.
his deal, because that kind of crushes us on time. We've got about 10 days here, less than 10 days, we got a week.
But I think that, you know, if there would be something either the 22nd, 23rd, 24th, stay away from the Mondays and Fridays, maybe with people wanting to vacation or something. But if we could look at 22, 23, 24 for a quick commission meeting, and then for some administrative services time, maybe an hour, hour and a half. I don't think the commission meeting itself will take more than 10, 15 minutes.
I could do it on the 22nd in the morning, we're gonna be going to Fargo, and then staying overnight on the 22nd, so we'll be back.
How would that work for others that are here? Bob, Diana, Tom?
22nd in the morning, is
Really?
fine, in the afternoon, not.
Yeah, oh, that's me too, so that'd be good.
So the 22nd, we could have, at what time did you want to start?
Well, start at, I don't know, either 8:30, 9 o'clock, but what works
Sure.
for you, Cindy?
Anytime.
Well, let's have it at 9 o'clock.
Okay, 9 o'clock on the 22nd is when we will have the commission meeting. And then right after that, we'll spend some time doing administrative services and just kind of review COVID funding. Okay. Then we should be able to have that information by next Tuesday from those individuals, and that could be, they could be on via the camera.
Madam Chair, I will be out of town, so if it's all right, I'd appear via Zoom as well.
Oh, that'd be fine. That should be fine.
Okay, then how about on the 20th of July, do we want to meet as administrative services at 3 o'clock before so we can have it together? What we're gonna do for the commission meeting then?
The 20th of July is when we have zone, human service zone. It's always the second meeting of the month.
Well, I guess they're more important than everything else.
Well, no, they're not. But would it make more sense to try to do that the first meeting of July?
Sure, we can get, if Ms. Nelson's got the stuff pulled together, that would be fine.
Yeah, you could give preliminary approval on the 6th.
Okay,
All right, that'd be great.
so we could do that meeting at, what did you say, 2 or 3?
I think three would be enough, wouldn't it?
I think so.
3 o'clock on the 6th.
So the administrative services meeting on the 22nd will be to discuss the American Rescue Plan dollars.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then at 3 o'clock on July 6th, it would be budget.
Would the commission meeting on the 22nd of June also be for the fireworks and the special event permit?
That would be the county commission, yeah.
On the which day in June here?
June 22nd at 9.
We'll start with that.
Yeah,
Okay, that'll be good.
and then they could come on, if they don't want to come down, they could be available like by Zoom.
Yep, we can do that.
I just, you know, and the biggest concern, obviously, we didn't get enough information from the gal from Larimore. The other one, she hadn't checked with the sheriff or with Ryan Reisinger.
They're waiting on Ryan now, yeah. And Ryan's been on vacation, so that's a good possibility they haven't heard from him yet. I think the sheriff didn't have any concern.
Ryan's usually really good, to get back to his calls and stuff, so. Yeah, then that way, we'll be that much closer to the budget, determination, and then Tuesday, we can have a little discussion about the American Recovery Funds. And get those 2 last items figured out on the last Tuesday. Wonderful.
Do you think I should then, for July 6th commission meeting, say that we are going to have preliminary approval of budget or list it Even if I list it and you guys decide not to do it, that's fine.
You can table it.
Yeah, you can go.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be tabled.
I always worry that we approve it too early and then we can't change it.
That's happening.
Can't go up, we can go down.
Well, I know, that's a concern. Okay, and then, that's everything for us.
Well, then that way at least we're moving forward and, you know, we do need to think about getting into 2023, what we're going to do. We still know that we've got some arbitrage issues with buildings, whether it be the penitentiary, where the sheriff is housed, you know, and, you know, we did approve, Bob's, or not Bob, I was thinking Bob Sanderson. We did approve, the Human Service Center coming back in, but we need to take them out of the equation once and just have a discussion about what would be available in this building to support, whether it be Sheriff's Department or Bridges program or EOC. I mean, we've got some places that need homes.
Yeah.
But haven't we crossed that bridge by making our decision this week, Tuesday, about?
That's correct.
I was thinking about Northeast.
Oh, yeah, but they're in for 2 years, but what's possible is in 2 years, that lease would be up and then we may, you know, if they keep reducing space down, then we're not gonna be able to tell the voters to build a new building when we have extra space in this building. Or if it would be cheaper for us to house the sheriff and the juvenile detention in here if it's feasible versus Northeast, instead of building the building, we're gonna have a hard time selling it. I can see it already in this. I'm really concerned about the school district bill. And I think ours will be a harder sell than that, so.
Maybe do we have a lease with social services now? How does that work? Cause they're like a hybrid.
The state pays us indirect costs, and because we actually billed them right in the past, we get that back as part of our indirect costs, so it was good that we did it.
I just wonder if so the legislature's commission that's lease study. To Commissioner Ross' point, you're absolutely correct, sir. They want to get out of the lease paying business. That's the end goal. So I also
And Bingham
wonder,
seemed not to know that.
I don't think they're gonna build, the state's not gonna build any more buildings. They're stuck with building
I
now.
just wonder if they're gonna look for ways to reduce how much they're paying. So is that gonna also in 2 years? And I'm not advising the commission make decisions on a crystal ball, but is human services zone then gonna be coming back saying, well, now we need to shrink our footprint?
Well, I think more and more businesses, that's clear from COVID, more and more are gonna have.
Have people working at home.
Yeah, it works out.
You bet. Less parking lot space, less lunch space, bathroom space, workspace. Lynn did say, you know, that therapists like to be together, but, you know, when I was on the Northeast board and they did not have any therapists to the western part of North Dakota, they were doing Zoom calls or whatever, and the client would talk to their therapist via Zoom because that was the only option. People liked that because it wasn't you and the therapist in the room. You had a little bit of, you know, a separation. And so that may continue to be something that may continue to grow.
Yeah.
So people don't feel so threatened or don't feel like, oh my God, I'm in this room and, you know, this therapist is whatever. The ones that did it, they heard very positive, and even positive from the therapist's point of view.
Well, I think I might have told a couple of you, but I think Mr. Ford was aware and we talked about it, but you know, across the street, the sheriff met with them and they were talking about a courthouse and a sheriff's building and everything being built out by the correctional center. Well, I mean, that's total, district court, sheriff.
They had that security meeting over at the courthouse.
Court administrator,
Yeah.
presiding judge, the
And-
sheriff.
Andy's idea was to turn the entire courthouse over to the museum or the historical society and build a whole big complex to house everybody but the, you know.
Yeah,
That's what
include
Polk
the-
County did.
Yeah, but
Crookston
that's,
has that.
that's just not gonna happen.
You know, it's,
But they had a building that had they had a professional building right across the street from the county courthouse that needed to be imploded because it was old. The county courthouse is still used, but it's social services, and it's some city offices. They don't do a lot of county type things there, particularly with the second and third floors where it was court administration and the courthouse. Cheaper, you don't have to pay anybody to take a prisoner. You know, really, for the facility, the way that they set it up, the judges are in their section. But if you need a prisoner to come to court, somebody just walks them down and brings them into court. It's not like you have to put them in a car and you know, have them travel a few blocks in town. They really like it, but then they had some space issues that they knew they were going to be losing because social services was in their old professional building.
And some of their
That's how they
buildings,
had it all.
some of that building, like where the county attorney was, that was really condemned
Yep,
property.
it was bad.
Whereas our building is a really fantastic building over there.
Yeah, it
That's really amazing. So,
Well, and that's just shows that this county has chosen to keep up the courthouse and preserve the courthouse. It hasn't been easy by any means, and dealing with asbestos, dealing with marble, tile, all of that, but throughout the years, the county has done an exceptional job in keeping this building very viable. So it's something to be proud of because, you know, we've seen issues in smaller counties that they're pretty bad. The one in Walsh County is really bad.
well, Cooperstown.
Cooperstown, that was just,
Yeah. That was Mold City.
that was, and by how they went about it, not getting a pass on a vote 3 times to the public and said, oh, we're just gonna do it. Well, somehow 5 commissioners don't have jobs after that. But if you know what the laws are, you have to follow what the process is. I don't care who you are and whether you need it or not. So that was just a whole blown up thing. And even the commissioners didn't approve it, but then my question would have been, where's the state's attorney? The state's attorney was like, you can't do this. I mean, you can't, you know, so I'm just shocked that,
I think she was voted out too.
oh yeah, well, for good reason.
So are you getting, in that plan that they came up with across the street, were you getting moved up north too?
I don't know.
Oh.
I assume so if they're selling it off to the historical.
Yeah, you were at the meeting.
Well, they were gonna sell it to the Historical Society, which just tells you how naive it is, because they have no money.
No, they got my extra now.
They-
Actually, the word was turn it over to them.
Oh, yeah, freebie, yeah.
Who wants to turn it over?
Andy.
Well, thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thank
See you, I don't know, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday the 22nd.
Got it.
You going on vacation again?
Yep,
Or how?
again, I haven't been on
Oh, it seems like
vacation.
you're always on vacation.
What time about?
That was Mr. Ford.
Oh, yeah, that's.
We look alike.
Same board, you got same board.
That's true.
They're
He is, and here, our children and their
Say
and
Mr.
our grandchildren are going